Welcome to another edition of the Shadow Cast. And today we have Claire Curtis, a medium, and she's going to be talking all about the ethics of mediumship. Before
Hello,
I
everybody.
introduce Claire, hello Claire. Today we are joined as ever by Chris
Hi.
and by Dave.
Hi.
Claire, nice to see you.
And you guys, how are you?
All good.
Yes.
Yes, very well, thank you. Enjoying the weather.
Yes.
Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey into spiritual practice?
So I am a healer and a medium. I have been a medium for about 4 or 5 years now, on and off. And I have been working more consistently for the past 2 years on rostrums and in what we call a psychic suppers, where you have groups of people. My huge emphasis of what I do goes on to the healing side of things. So I'm a level 2 Reiki practitioner. I'm looking to do 3 and 4 in the summer. And for me, the healing side of things comes before the mediumship, because we carry a lot of debris and trauma around with us. So I like to work on that. But as a child, I was deeply into spiritualism. As a teenager, I got into tarot cards and more intuitive developments. So at first, whilst I was really interested in it and exploring it, it gradually got stronger for me to look into it. And over time, I developed an understanding on how spiritual practices could be used to support people with emotional and spiritual problems. That led me to do a counselling course, and then I developed into the Reiki healing, and then I've learned that being spiritual and being a medium is not necessarily enough for people. People need whatever it is that they need. So I'm looking to hopefully help out and give them something back, or give them some way of healing past traumas. And I'm really into supporting people through those kind of things.
For our audience, could you describe what Reiki is and how it might work?
Yeah, so Reiki is an energy healing. You can get angelic Reiki, you can do angel healing, and it is essentially using the life force that's within the system. So my general test is, if you rub your hands together and then push them like this, if you can feel some resistance, then you can feel the force of the energy that I work with. And anyone can do that. And then you can learn how to harness that energy. And essentially, it's like me plugging myself in. So I tend to think of myself as a conduit. So like when you've got a laptop charger and you plug it into the laptop and then you plug it into the socket at the wall, one hand goes to the ether and wherever else, and the other hand goes to the patient. And I am the conduit for that energy, and it travels through me. And we have great success at the church that I work at. I volunteer every week for drop-in sessions for people that come. Some people would like counselling, but they aren't confident enough to go for that. So they have the Reiki healing. We can use crystals as part of that as well. My colleague does that one now. I'm not fully trained on that yet. So essentially you can have it hands-on or you can have it hands-off, depending on the person that you're working with. But you channel the energy to wherever they're feeling that they need it. A lot of people come with knees and hip problems, so we concentrate on that area. And after a bit of a wiggle and a walk, they do tend to say that they feel better. And that's the main thing. If you feel better, you're more likely to go on and do something that you would normally do, rather than putting it off because you don't feel like it. So that's really important to me.
It sounds like very rewarding work that you do. It must be lovely to see people leave in a better frame of mind compared to when they first arrived.
Yes, there's a lady that comes on a regular basis, and she's had a change of jobs recently, and she's got an incredibly stressful job working with people that most people would not choose to go anywhere near, never mind work with. And she she's found that the Reiki really helps with the emotional backlog that she has. I mean, it's not to say that she doesn't have to physically restrain sometimes or protect herself from these people. So physically, her job is also demanding, but the emotional backlog of having to restrain somebody that's trying to get you, or having to protect yourself from that person, and then learning about where that person's come from and all the emotional traumas that they're carrying, she then carries that weight a little with her as she's learning to deal with them. So she finds that the Reiki, she'll almost nod off on the table while she's having it. And we only offer 20-minute sessions at the drop-in, so you don't really get much chance for a snooze. But she finds that she can sleep after she's had the Reiki and get a good night's rest before she carries on with the rest of her work for the next day. So, and there's a lady that comes and she's got bad knees. She always finds a benefit from it, although she has all over Reiki, literally top to toe. She does find the benefit with her knees as well. And then there's another lady who comes who has abdominal problems. I'm not privy exactly what it's been diagnosed as, but she enjoys seated Reiki. So we'll have people on a couch, so they're laid out as if they're going to have a massage, and they'll have Reiki on there. Or if you're not capable for whatever reason, you can have seated Reiki, and that's what she has. And she's found such benefit with it. And she's gone actually to Harley Street recently for more in-depth investigations to find out what's going on with her. And she's been telling them about how she goes to see us. And they've been a bit like, we're not quite sure about that. I said, well, it works. So there you are.
Excellent.
Yes.
The main emphasis of this show is really to address the ethical views and standpoints that you would face in mediumship. We've got lots of questions for you. And my first question along those lines would be, if you were to receive a message from Spirit, how exactly would you decide if it should be shared with the sitter or not?
Well, if we're going to talk about ethics, then from my point of view, I think I should explain what I believe and how I see it, so that whoever's listening can understand where I'm coming from. So with ethical communication, it's got to be honest and respectful and responsible, and it's got to be focused on the well-being of the other person. We're taught quite early on that we can't necessarily say exactly what's given to us from Spirit if we believe wholeheartedly that the sitter will have a negative effect from it. So we have to be truthful, but we must avoid exaggerating anything, so that we don't make it sound bigger or harsher than it could be. And we also need to be clear with our limitations for our sitter, so that they can understand that, yes, we're channeling a spirit, but we can only give what we're given, and we will not make anything up to fit. And with that, it also involves setting a professional boundary. So with the sitter, they have to understand that it's going to be a conversation, a 3-week conversation, and that they have their own choices as well. If the conversation becomes one that they don't want to hear, or they're finding it uncomfortable or difficult to sit through for whatever reason, then they have their own free will, and they can choose, if they wish to stop at that point. So it's important to make sure that what's given is given with honesty and truth, because it can influence then how people feel and people think, and the decisions that they make when they leave your practice. We've had people before that have had hallelujah moments where something's clicked and they felt better, or they've begun to understand. And then unfortunately there's been some instances with some colleagues of mine where they've gave sitters exact information that they've been given, and not filtered it in any way, which is ethically fine, I suppose. But the person then receiving it wasn't in the quiet frame of mind that it was supposed to be given in, and then has gone away and had a bit of a rough time about it. So it's being very careful, because anything that you say as a throwaway comment could cause unnecessary stress or fear. Somebody could get afraid of what's going on, and an exaggerated conversation could then give somebody all sorts of emotional stresses. And at the end of the day, it's the words that matter. So it's got to be very thoughtful, and I've got to be aware and responsible for myself, for my sitter, and for the spirit that comes through, because it should really be an empowering conversation. It shouldn't be something that you should worry about afterwards. And I mean, we all go away after we've had our sittings, and we all think about what's been going on. And I've been to mediums, and I've gone away, and I've sat there and I've racked my brains for ages, thinking about this, that, and the other, and the coulda, woulda, shouldas, and all sorts of things. But that's okay, because it didn't give me any undue stress. But if as somebody went away with that undue stress, then on my part, it wouldn't be a good reading at all.
No, I completely understand that. Could you give us an example of when your personal boundaries have been tested?
So with personal boundaries, it can be a little difficult with social media, because you have access 24/7 to anybody's page. So I have my own personal page, and I have my Claire Reiki Healer page. I have my Claire Reiki Healer TikTok. I have my Claire Reiki Healer YouTube, and they are all very much separate from my personal one, apart from the issues around my pets that we're trying to get some funding to help with vets bills for. So that's a bit of a crossover, but anything to do with myself is kept on one side. From a local perspective, it can be a little bit difficult when you work somewhere closer to home and there's people there that you know, and they might try to influence you to do more or to say more or to sway you in some way. And a lot of the time, as a medium, you have to really set up very strict boundaries, because for the greatest will in the world, your sitter will try and tell you and join in with the conversation about what you're telling them from spirit. But then that influences you on what you're saying. And if they try to message you on Facebook or whatever, or come to speak to you in the street, it can be very difficult, because I'm not working in the street. I've switched off that part of my mind, because I need to be looking where I'm going or driving or whatever I'm doing. So I have to explain to people that if you want a message, or if you want to discuss a message or anything like that, it's fine, brilliant, but I'll have to make an arrangement for you to do that, so that I can be in the right frame of mind to do so, because I'm a human person and I have my own things. I have my own washing to do. I have my own children to sort out. I've got all these other things going on in my head, family-wise or whatever, that I need to then say to myself, right, no, we're working now and my focus is on you only. And I can't just be like jumping in and giving what ifs and buts, and I have to be very clear. There's been a couple of instances recently where I've done psychic suppers, and there's been groups of people that were parents of children that I've worked with in my previous guise as a special needs teaching assistant. And because they know me, they think that they can speak to me in a certain way, or that they can have an in-depth conversation. And I have to point out at that point that I'm working and this is where I am. And if you want to talk to me, that's fine. We'll do that later. But that's about as far as it goes, as far as professional boundary setting in the wider world. Gratefully, I've not had the same feedback or comeback as some of the other mediums that I know. There's a lady, unfortunately, who has been attacked a few times after readings because she didn't give over the message that they wanted. And it's heartbreaking, because I know as well as anybody else that you can only give what you're given. So if it's not what they wanted to hear, then it's not what they were given. It's not feasible to complain about it, because we can't put words into spirit and we can't make it up, and we certainly can't read their mind to find out what it is that they want to hear and tell them that. Or at least I can't. I don't have that skill, which might be very useful in the future if I could find out. So yeah, with professional boundaries, luckily, I've not really had to have many standpoints where I've had to set anything out. But there is a list of things that I go through at the beginning of a sitting, just to explain what I am going to do, what I'm going to actually hopefully bring through, and then how it should be taken, and then the steps to be taken afterwards if there is anything that you want to talk about. And if the thing with having a sitting, you'll think about it and then you'll go home, and then like a day or so later you'll have a question or you'll think about something, and at that point it's very difficult to then, for me, go back into the mindset of, I'm not sure what we were talking about, because I don't hold it in my head. It's too much for me. And that can be a bit tricky to explain to people. But generally, on the whole, from my experience, people are very understanding on that one.
A couple of questions before we hear from Chris. First of all, could you explain what a psychic supper is?
So that is generally a meal. We have them. There's many places around my local area that do them, and generally you pay a provider for a ticket, you get a meal out of it, and then you'll be seated at a table. There's generally 7 or 8 people at the table, or generally 7, with the 8th chair for the medium to sit. And it's a bit like a speed date for a medium. You literally go after your food and sit down at the table. And if it's your first table of the evening, then you go around and you give as many people a reading as you can, and then you move on to the next table, and then to the next table. I've only ever done 3 tables of a psychic supper, and literally each table then gets 3 separate mediums. The first medium sets off, and then the other 2 fill in the gaps and give the people that haven't already had a message, and hopefully everybody gets something to take home that evening. And the last one I went to was at a social club near to my home. The lady that runs it, she had one of the mediums call in sick, so she rang me up to go there, and it was brilliant because I got a jacket potato, and then I got lots of free coffee, and then I got to go around, and it was actually at that one where I saw the people that were the parents of the children that I used to work with, and it was a bit okay. They were like, "Oh, you're here," and then they were like looking at me like, "I know you. Why do I know you?" And then it got a little bit tricky, but we sorted it. But I went around 3 tables. The first table was brilliant. From a medium's perspective, the only problem with that can be that you're in close quarters with everybody, and you've got to lock yourself down. A lot of mediumship things works on the way that the energy flows within the body, and if you're sat very close to somebody that's got a huge aura, or you can feel that they're tense or they're angry or they're really sad, it can then like come on you a little and affect how you are. I was sat next to a gentleman on my second table, and he was very much of a disbeliever, and he was having none of it at all, and he kept going on about all these things, and I was like, right, come on then, I'll give you a reading. And somebody said no, he's already had one. And he says, yeah, I didn't get it, I didn't want this, that and the other. And I'm literally sat next to him as he's going off on one at me. I'm like, okay, well then, so who do I need to give a reading to? And just try to carry on the best I can. But it's like that with everybody, I suppose, in the world. You get people that do, you get people that don't, and people that are quite obnoxious about it. By the 3rd medium, he'd been spoken to by the provider of the psychic supper and been told that if he didn't behave himself and speak more politely, that he would be ejected from the venue. So it's nice that the providers are like that for you, and they will go around. I know there's been quite a few psychic suppers that I've done where there's been lots of people with lots of happy endings, lots of lovely readings, lots of tears of joy. So it can be a wonderful experience for many people, and it's a social event for the people as well. People tend to come in families or friendship groups, and they'll know the spirit that comes through as a group. So whatever I say, you'll get more than one person going, oh, yeah. Oh, and then you'll get them like communicating in like a whisper behind you, and then you'll carry on, and then they'll go, oh yeah, and it's very validating when you get more than one person saying yes, that's true, yes, I can understand that, yes, that makes sense. And they are a useful tool of getting into having a reading if you're not sure about going to see somebody on a one-to-one. That can be quite daunting. I know myself, before I went out on the medium side and did this, I went to see an old colleague of mine from a different place that I used to work with, and she invited me around for a reading, and that was quite intense. And sometimes I think the psychic supper is a nice way to edge your way in if you want to, if you're interested, if you're curious. It's something that you can look at. You get food out of it. There's generally a bar, so you can have a drink and make it a right night, and then go into town if you want to. So it's generally a really fun atmosphere. You can get afternoon teas, and there's one that I've seen advertised on social media where you can have an evening with the dead, and essentially it's a psychic supper, but it's got a 3-course meal, and it's in a nice posh place. So,
well, I must say it sounds exhausting for the medium.
it can be tiring. It can be very tiring. That's why they like to feed you first. You get your food first, and then you go around and you do it. And they do keep an eye on you. Most of the providers are used to this kind of work, and they'll look over you and they'll see if your energy is getting drained, offer you a drink, and if they can see that the table's being obnoxious for whatever reason, then they will come over and interject at whatever point, just to make sure that you're okay, even if it's just that they wave at you and then you stick your thumb up and go, yeah, I'm all right. But that in turn will then make the people around you look and see that someone's looking after you, and quite often that's enough to get them to calm down if they're being a bit rowdy. It just depends on how many they've had, I suppose, with the drinks because there is a bar usually where you go. So there's generally alcohol involved, and some people get quite heated as they do.
Yes, to be honest, I'm surprised that alcohol is permitted at this kind of event, but maybe times have changed.
Well, social clubs are social clubs, so they do what they do.
The other question I was going to ask was, is it correct that you can completely switch off, in the sense of you decide that you're not going to hear anything from spirit, for example, whilst you are driving from one place to another? Is that correct?
It is correct. It takes some learning. It's not easy to do, and it's not something that is what you have first of all. When I first started being the medium, and it wasn't necessarily my choice to go out and be a medium today, I had, I thought I was losing the plot. I had visions, I had voices, I had feelings of like cold or hot or stomach aches or headaches, and it took me longer than I'm proud to say to figure out that it wasn't necessarily me, it was them giving me, quite often the person that stood next to me's conditions. Quite often I was getting given people's hips and stomach aches, or the deceased's conditions before they passed, and that took some figuring out from my point of view, because you don't know. There's no handbook. No one can actually say, this is what's happening, this is what you're going to do, and then this will happen, because there's no script for it at all. So you do have to learn how to switch off. You do have to learn how to get on with being a regular human person during the day or whatever, and then say, okay, now I'm going to open myself up. Come, what do you want to tell me? And then you'll get whatever you need to get. The more you do it as well, the stronger that it's. A bit like a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger you get. The more you do your healing, the more confident you get, and the more stronger you get, and the better you are able to filter the healing for the person that you're working with. And with mediumship, I was gratefully allowed, by accident, because the medium was unfortunately unable to turn up, but I was allowed to work at the church that I attend last weekend. And it was great because I had no idea I was going to do it. I'd actually gone there in my toe to boots and everything because I really wasn't expecting to be working, and took those off and then got on with it. But that then, taking me out of my comfort zone, completely throw me in the deep end, actually allowed me to then just get on with it and just say, right, come on then, I'm going to be humble servant this afternoon. Let's see what we can do. And I was able to bring forward some messages that were taken on board. There was some philosophy that I was able to convey to the audience regarding being out of your comfort zone and asking for help when you need to. And it was gratefully received by the congregation. And then there was one message, I can't remember, I don't hold it all in my head, but I remember this one message from that day where the spirit had been walking with a lady who's she's had a terrible time recently, bless her. She has gone and started walking out in like the peaks and the dales just to clear ahead. And they showed me the bridge that she'd walked over, and I described this bridge to her, and she was like, yeah, I was there last week. And I was like, oh, okay. But that kind of conversation is brilliant. But it was a case of I had to switch myself on so that I could do that, and then switch myself off again so that I could come home and do it with the kids.
Thank you, Claire. Let's have a couple of questions from Chris.
Has the spirits ever been violent or threatened when you've been speaking to them, Claire?
So the spirits that I get coming through will come through with the personalities that they had when they were walking the earth plane. So if they were obnoxious and verbally abusive, then they will come through as such. But that is their authentic selves, and the recipient wouldn't understand them if they didn't come across like that initially, because it would be their loved one. So as for violent, I'm assuming you would be referring to more like poltergeisty kind of things. And no, we have had an incident in the home with the ghost that liked to push people down the stairs. He had a thing about getting you when you're on the third step from the bottom and making you go flying. He sent me, he sent the lady that lived here before, and he sent my mother-in-law. Most of the children have gone down the stairs awkwardly as well. I think, though, most of them have gone down and landed on the bottoms. I got a full bore shove, but I think that's because at the time when it happened, I hadn't learnt how to close myself off properly. And I went forwards and had to put my hand out to stop myself falling on the, because I'm in a terraced house, so there's the stairs and then a wall. So I had to put my hand out to stop me hitting the wall, and then kind of like curve myself around so that I spilled out into the dining room at the bottom. That turned out to be the spirit of a young boy who frequents the premises, although he's not been for a while, or at least I've not seen or heard or felt him for a while. He used to appear as hands and feet initially. So there were these little ghostly feet in scrubby little shoes with little tiny socks and these little spindly legs. And then they'd be like these sort of hand kind of shapes. That was all you'd see. But yes, he was an interesting character. He really enjoyed it when we started making use of the loft that had been converted. Well, it's not been converted properly by proper building regs, but you can get up there and access it. And he enjoyed sitting on the top and swinging his feet in that area. I'm not quite sure why he enjoyed it. Again, it was back in my earlier days when these things were happening. So, yes, I've had that. I've had a couple of instances where spirits have come very close. So, to caveat all this, as a medium, you ask spirits to draw close to you because you want them to blend with your energy so you can feel, you can see, you can hear. Sometimes they'll give you the taste of like cigarettes or something to help you convey to the recipient about who they are. And I've had a few come really close and make me feel very ill and very, not demonic oppression, but very much like I'm not as in control as what I'd like. And that then spurred me off onto a different tangent of mediumship called trance mediumship, where you actually ask for that to happen. You actually ask for a spirit to enter you, and then you actually ask them to overlay your face and give an image of themselves and then speak a message. But generally with those spirits, you're asking ones to come forward that are going to give brilliant philosophy or answers to the meaning of life, not try and kill somebody. So generally on that standpoint, the chance thing works really well. But for the one that I got through, it was like having, I don't even know, like having a backpack of like something stupidly heavy on my shoulders, and then having like a vice around my head, and my stomach was retching, and I didn't enjoy it at all. And it that then, like I say, when you go on to the trance thing, you learn then how to guard yourself against that kind of spirit that will come too close and give you those conditions, and set up your boundaries with them. Because although you have professional boundaries with the humans that you work with, you also have to set boundaries with spirit as what you can and what you can't do. I've been told many times I could quite easily do the trance thing and I could quite easily bring them through, but until I know what I'm doing, I have to keep saying no, because from my point of view, half of it, what I've learned so far, is absolutely fascinating, and the other half scares the bejeebus out of me. So until I've got past that fear, no way I'll go any further than that.
Okay, back to you, Lee.
Just before we hear from Dave, just to ask you, Claire, when you were shoved on the stairs, did you actually feel what would resemble a human hand on your back at all?
Yeah, full ball push. Yes, and my Facebook memories come up every now and then with a photograph of the bruise from my ankle, because for some reason, out of all of it, my ankle took the brunt of it, and gratefully it was my clutch leg, so I could still drive. But yeah, I had a massive bruise. So where you've got your, I'm going to get my foot out now, but where you've got your little bone on the side of your ankle, I had a massive bruise, and it looked like a crocodile's mouth, but it was all swollen and purple. But yes, there was definitely hands, and I was definitely pushed. It was definitely not me slipping, because the way that I went, I was stood, albeit for part of a second, and then the next thing I know, my entire body kind of went off, and my feet did that, off the step onto the next one, and then I went forwards. So yeah, it was not, I mean, because I was learning to be a medium, I was going through many things, again, thinking I lost my marbles or whatever else, because it can't be that, it can't be this, can't be that, can't be that. But how did I do that then? How did I do? And I spent ages just going through all these questions in my own mind of, well, how did it happen? And how did I feel this? But there was definitely hands, it was definitely a push. And then after I learnt a bit more about mediumship, we had a certain talking to said spirit, and said spirit hasn't done it again since. So, I mean, he has been back a couple of times, but then he hasn't been back much after that. So I'm not quite sure if I've managed to get my boundaries to encapsulate my home so that he doesn't return, or if he's just not been busy or not been bothered to come back, because spirit will do what the spirit wants to do.
And can you remember, did you feel the shove low down on the back or between the shoulder blades?
No, it was low down, and it almost felt like there was like a kick behind my knees as well.
Oh, okay.
So, but I attributed that part to why my feet went like that off the step instead of being on the step. So yeah, no, there was definitely a shove, but it was interesting as well, because until that happened, I really hadn't had much physical interaction with any of the spirits that I've been trying to work with or communicate to. And then after that happened, other people in our family got affected, and it turned out that the lady that lived there before had been affected by it. But they'd all ended up on their bottoms and going bump, bump, bump down the stairs, a bit like the thing true from EastEnders, whereas I went forwards. So the only thing, as I say, I could attribute to was because I was trying to be open and I was trying to do all this learning, and then, yeah, my boundaries weren't in place, and I came a cropper for it. I was just grateful, actually, that I didn't become unconscious, because if I hadn't have put my hand out, my head would have hit that wall, and that would have been very difficult.
Of course, so obviously disconcerting at the time, but it could have been worse.
Well, yeah, a lot worse. A lot worse. But my little boy, he was, gosh, he must have been about 3 at the time. I mean, he's nearly 16 now, so. But he came to me, and I had to ask him to go and get my phone because I was just in a heap at the bottom of the stairs. And then he tried to help me up, and I told him not to. And it took me ages to actually gather, because this was the other weird bit. It took me ages. I could control like my shoulders and down to like my waist, but below that, my legs, it took me ages to get my head around moving my feet, or at least it felt like it took ages to actually get myself into a position that I could then sort of army crawl forwards off the stairs, because my legs were sort of not tied up. It was weird, but they were like crossed up the stairs. And yeah, as I say, there was many questions that I asked myself. It was a very strange experience.
Yes, that's putting it mildly. Dave, we have a couple of questions from you.
Yeah, hello, Claire.
Hello.
So, obviously, the physical aspects, but from your own experience or talk to other mediums, what are the sort of risks are there involved?
So generally, the risks aren't from the dead. Generally, the risks are from living people that are around. I mentioned briefly earlier that there's a lady that I know. She does massive events like psychic suppers, generally in social clubs or pubs, and she has had many unfortunate encounters with upset people who either didn't like what she said, didn't get the message that she wanted, for whatever reason, were completely disgruntled. And she's had chairs thrown at her, cups, glasses. She's had people waiting for her outside before she's gone in a car to leave the premises, and to verbally abuse her. Luckily, she's got away without any physical assaults on that one. But there are some other mediums as well that have had backlash because their jovial nature and cheeky kind of side hasn't been received well. So a lot of the risks that from medium are not from the spirit realm at all. It's from the humans that you encounter and speak to, and it's them that we protect ourselves more from. We get insurance, because everybody loves to claim for anything that they can, and to make sure that we're covered and clear, we all take out an insurance before we go out onto the road or the rostrum, so that if anything should come to pass, we have a coverage to protect ourselves. And for the healing as well, there's a coverage for that as well. So it's not necessarily the spirit realm that's an issue. There are risks with other kinds of mediumship than I can do at the moment. There's many different fascinating versions of mediumship where you can use ectoplasm to manipulate objects, or to actually bring forward the essence or the image, like a projector image of a spirit, using your own energy. And with that comes with huge risks, because you are in a state where any shock could disconnect and give your human body too much information and cause you significant trauma through your heart or your brain or falls, or depending on how you're actually performing at the time. There have been some amazing mediums that have done things where they can make trumpets move and float around and play on their own using their essence and the spirit's guidance to do that. But that comes with a huge energy drain from the human person. So, like, for instance, at the minute, talking to you guys, I am a little bit under the weather with hay fever, but I can feel my vocal cords starting to dry up. So I'm going to take a sip of water in a moment. And the risk of doing things on the platform is that then if you don't do that, then you develop a cough, then you get a sore throat, and then you take that away with you, and then you can have sort of human ailments that are coming from doing this kind of work if you don't take care of yourself. So I am going to take a sip of water. But from a spirit perspective, they generally don't do anything that you don't ask them to do. And when you learn how to be a medium and how to bring them forward and then bring those messages forward, you learn all these things, how to protect yourself. Excuse me. So I think someone's cooking something downstairs. It's making my eyes water. There's many risks involved, but they are mostly from the people that you work for or with.
That's also because that's the negative, but maybe on the more positive or light-hearted stuff. When you talk to these individuals and the personality, do there all sorts of subjects come up which links to their past life, whether it's interest or anything like that?
Yes, so they'll come forward and they'll give you information about how they grow up, how they live their lives, how they pass away, people that they know. So for me, perspectively, it's brilliant to have an insight into somebody, the way somebody else has lived their life. So, for instance, the lady that I mentioned earlier, where she was on a walk with the bridge, the person that came through was a lady relative of hers, and she was telling me about how the lady in the audience grew up and about how her school, where she used to go to after school rather, and that then made sure that the woman that I was speaking to in the audience understood who I was communicating with, and that actually the evidence that I was giving her was right, and that she knew then who I was communicating with, and she was sure actually that I wasn't just making it up, that I was communicating with somebody because I was telling her things that only she could really know. There's been many instances, sorry, my eyes are watering now. There's been many instances where there's been lots of information conveyed that I have no idea about, and I've used words in the past regarding art techniques and really sciencey stuff that I haven't got the foggiest about, and I'll be like questioning, going, is it? And I've tried to say the word, and then I've like gone no, and I've said the word again, and then the person in the audience knows what I'm on about, and I'm like, and I could carry on, and then then I'm like, well, that was really interesting, but because I'm working as a medium, and then when I switch off, I forget a load of stuff. So I have these wonderful conversations with these people and learn such a huge amount of things. I can only remember the conversation I was having with the woman about the bridge last week, because that was last week, and that's actually quite clear in my head, because the vision of the bridge that she gave me, it was a medieval bridge. It was just big enough for a horse and cart. It had got wooden, I don't even know what they were, and then it got like diamond shapes in it, so like passing places, and there was water in the river, and she was showing me the leaves in the river and the twinkling of the sunshine on the top of the water, and I could see in the water, and it wasn't very deep, and there were stones in it, and it was just like I was zoomed in on it. It was like I was just taken there in that moment. And then it turned out the sitter was like, yeah, I sat there for quite some time looking at it and just watching it and losing myself in the water because it was so peaceful. And that's just like amazing from my opinion, because there's no way I know that. I mean, I've probably seen something similar, but I wouldn't know that at all. I wouldn't know that she was up in the Dales last week and she did all these things, and there was these people walking, and she had a conversation with some gentleman about something that I can't quite remember what the gist of it was, but she understood it. So that was the important bit. It's not up to me to hold it all in. She understood it. She took it with her, and she was quite happy. So that was, yay, I've done my job right.
Claire, thank you very much for being on our show today.
You're very welcome.
What's next for you in terms of your spiritual journey?
So in the summer, I'm doing my Reiki 3. So that will give me a master teacher, and that will allow me then to know or be taught everything that we know about it so far, and give me another certificate for my file and more knowledge that I can convey on to other people. And then after that, I'm looking at doing the trance. I've been told by several of the tutors that I've worked with that I have the capacity, and at the moment it's daunting because it's absolutely fascinating. It really is. And when you sit there and you try and do it, it is absolutely amazing. But it's also terrifying because you have to understand your body and the way that you are and how it feels, and in many respects let it go. And it makes your heart race, or at least it makes my heart race at the moment, to the point where I can get quite nauseous. Apparently that's due to the blending of energies, and it's something that I'll work on. But I'll work on that for another day. And then maybe, you never know, I might be able to do this, and I might be able to do the trance thing, and I might be able to draw somebody over, and you might be able to give me a name, and I could change my face into whoever it is. Who knows? We'll have to see on that one. I don't know how far I can get with it. But yeah, there's lots of things that I'd like to do. From a human perspective, I'm going to go to university, and I'm going to study health and social care, because I've been led along the path of counsellor and support many times through many different aspects, and with the healing that I'm doing and the mediumship and the way that I'm trying to provide comfort to people, it feels like it's a natural progression to go into that kind of things from a general standpoint. Because as much as I'd love to say mediumship pays the bills and it's wonderful and I can have all the things that I want, it doesn't. So I need a real job with real people, and it makes sense to me to go to uni and do this, and use everything that I've learned so far from my family and my friends and all the situations that I've been put in or put myself into, and hopefully support and help people moving forward.
Well, we all wish you the very best.
Thank you.
It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Chris.
Bye.
And goodbye from Dave.
Bye.
Join us again for our next edition of The Shadow Cast.